The moment Olivia Carter stepped into the grand estate of the infamous billionaire Damen Sinclair, she knew she didn't belong there. The walls were lined with expensive artwork, the chandeliers glittered like a galaxy of stars, and the sheer size of the place made her feel like she had wandered into a palace. Her worn-out sneakers barely made a sound against the polished marble floors as she followed the housekeeper, Mrs. Holloway, through the long corridor. "You'll be expected to start immediately," the older woman said, glancing back at Olivia with sharp, assessing eyes. "Mr. Sinclair is not an easy man to deal with. Many caregivers before you have quit within a week." Olivia swallowed, gripping the strap of her old handbag. "I don't quit easily." Mrs. Holloway arched a brow. "I hope that's true." For Olivia, failure wasn't an option. As a single mother struggling to raise her 5-year-old son, Ethan, she couldn't afford to walk away from this opportunity. The pay was more than she had ever earned in her life. It was the kind of money that could finally give Ethan the stability he deserved. Even if it meant bathing a man she had never met. Even if that man was Damen Sinclair, the billionaire who had disappeared from the public eye after a tragic accident left him unable to care for himself. Olivia had heard the rumors that he was cold, ruthless, impossible to deal with, that the accident had turned him into a recluse refusing to see anyone but the staff who worked in his home. And now she was about to become part of that world. Mrs. Holloway stopped in front of a large wooden door and turned to Olivia. "This is his room," she said. "He doesn't like small talk. Do what you're here to do and don't take anything personally." Olivia nodded, wiping her sweaty palms against her jeans. "Got it." With a final look, Mrs. Holloway pushed the door open. Olivia stepped inside and felt her breath hitch. The room was dimly lit, massive in size, with floor-to-ceiling windows covered by thick drapes. A fireplace crackled in the corner, casting flickering shadows against the dark wooden walls. And in the center of the room, seated in a large wheelchair, was Damen Sinclair, her new employer and the man whose body she would soon be bathing. He was nothing like she had expected. Olivia had imagined an older man, frail and thin from months of isolation. Instead, Damen Sinclair was devastatingly handsome. His sharp jawline was covered in light stubble, his dark hair slightly tousled. He had the kind of chiseled features that belonged on magazine covers, not hidden away in a dimly lit mansion. But his most striking feature was his eyes, icy blue, piercing and filled with a coldness that sent a chill down Olivia's spine. He was watching her carefully, his expression unreadable. "You're the new one," he finally said, his voice deep and smooth. "Yes," Olivia managed to say. "Olivia Carter." He didn't acknowledge her introduction. Instead, he turned his wheelchair slightly as if dismissing her presence altogether. "Let's get this over with." She blinked. "Excuse me? You're here to bathe me, aren't you?" he said, his voice laced with something unreadable. "Then do it." Olivia hesitated. "Would you like me to assist you to the bathroom or—" "I can get there myself." With that, he rolled his wheelchair toward the ensuite bathroom, not sparing her another glance. Olivia took a deep breath before following him. She could do this. She had to do this. The bathroom was more luxurious than any she had ever seen, a massive glass shower, a deep soaking tub, and heated floors that felt warm beneath her feet. But Olivia barely had time to process her surroundings before Damen stopped in the middle of the room. "Help me undress." She froze. Her heart pounded violently against her ribs. She had known this was part of the job, had prepared herself for it, but standing here, facing a man like Damen Sinclair, it suddenly felt 1,000 times more intimate than she had expected. He must have noticed her hesitation because he let out a humorless chuckle. "What's wrong? I assumed you knew what this job required." Olivia straightened her shoulders. She refused to be intimidated. "Of course," she said, stepping forward. "Let's get started." Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the hem of his t-shirt. As she lifted it, her breath caught in her throat. She had expected scars, weakness, the broken body of a man who had given up on life. What she found instead was muscle, hard, defined, strong. His chest was sculpted, his abdomen firm. The ridges of his muscles clearly defined beneath her fingertips. There were scars, faint lines that told a story of pain and recovery, but they did nothing to diminish the sheer power of his physique. Olivia swallowed hard, forcing herself to remain professional. But then she made the mistake of looking up and found Damen staring at her. His jaw was clenched, his expression unreadable. The tension in the room was suffocating. "Do you like what you see, Miss Carter?" His voice was low, almost mocking. Olivia's cheeks burned. She quickly averted her gaze. "This isn't about what I like or don't like," she said, regaining her composure. "I'm here to do my job." "Good," he murmured. "Then do it." She moved efficiently after that, determined to remain unaffected. But with every brush of her fingers against his skin, every unspoken glance exchanged, she felt something shifting between them. Something dangerous. Something neither of them was ready to admit. And as she turned on the warm water and reached for the washcloth, one thought echoed in her mind: this job was going to be a lot more complicated than she had anticipated. The warm water cascaded over Damen's skin, steam curling in the air between them. Olivia worked in silence, her hands steady as she ran a soft cloth over his broad shoulders, careful not to linger too long. She could feel the tension rolling off him in waves, though whether it was from discomfort or something else she couldn't tell. "You're too quiet," Damen said suddenly, his voice cutting through the thick silence. Olivia hesitated. "I didn't think you were the type who liked small talk." "I'm not," he admitted. "But I don't like being treated like a fragile doll either." She paused, wringing out the washcloth before meeting his gaze. "I don't see you as fragile, Mr. Sinclair." His expression was unreadable, those icy blue eyes scanning her as if searching for a lie. "No," she said firmly. "You're still strong. I can see it in your body, in the way you move, in the way you try to act like you don't need help." A smirk ghosted across his lips, but there was no humor in it. "And yet, here we are. You bathing me like an invalid." "You're not an invalid," she countered without hesitation. "You're a man who's been through hell and is still fighting." Something flickered in his gaze, something raw, something vulnerable. But just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. "Turn the water off," he ordered. Olivia complied, stepping back as he reached for the towel beside him. But before he could grab it, she was already there, wrapping it around his waist with smooth efficiency. His body tensed. She pretended not to notice. "I'll help you back to your chair," she said. Damen hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. "Fine." She braced herself, placing one hand on his arm and the other at his back. He was heavier than she expected, the muscles beneath his skin solid and unyielding despite his injuries. Despite everything, he was strong, and the way his body reacted to her touch, tense, controlled, made something stir deep within her. As she guided him back into his wheelchair, their faces were inches apart. His breath was warm against her cheek, his grip tight on her wrist. "You're not afraid of me," he murmured. It wasn't a question. Olivia met his gaze without flinching. "Should I be?" A beat of silence, then he let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the stupidest." She smiled slightly, stepping back. Maybe a little of both. For the first time, something shifted between them. Not just as employer and caretaker. Something more. And neither of them knew how to stop it. That night, Olivia lay awake in the small guest room she had been given, staring at the ceiling. The events of the evening replayed in her mind, the feel of Damen's skin beneath her hands, the way he had looked at her. She had taken this job out of desperation, out of a need to provide for her son, but now she was wading into dangerous waters. Men like Damen Sinclair didn't belong in her world, and she didn't belong in his. So why did it feel like fate was pulling them together anyway? The next morning, Olivia found herself in the kitchen making coffee before starting her shift. Mrs. Holloway entered moments later, eyeing her with an expression that was unreadable. "You lasted longer than I expected," the older woman commented. Olivia smirked. "I'm stubborn." Mrs. Holloway hummed, pouring herself a cup of tea. "Be careful, dear. Mr. Sinclair doesn't let people in easily, and when he does," she paused, her gaze sharp, "it never ends well." Olivia swallowed, but said nothing. She wasn't here to get involved. She was here to do her job. At least that's what she kept telling herself. Later that afternoon, she entered Damon's room expecting the usual routine. Instead, she found him at the window, his hands gripping the arms of his wheelchair tightly, his jaw clenched. "Everything okay?" she asked cautiously. "Do I look okay?" His tone was sharp, biting. Olivia exhaled softly. "What happened?" He didn't answer at first, then he ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every movement. "My lawyer was here," he muttered. "More paperwork, more discussions about my condition, and whether I'm fit to continue managing my business." His business. The empire he had built from the ground up. The one he had been forced to step away from after the accident. Olivia watched him carefully. "And what do you think?" His eyes snapped to hers. "What do you mean? Do you think you're fit to go back?" she asked simply. His jaw tightened. "No one would take me seriously in this state." "That's not what I asked." He hesitated. For the first time, he seemed truly uncertain. Olivia stepped forward. "You can do it, Damen. But only if you stop seeing yourself as the man you used to be and start accepting the man you are now." He exhaled harshly, looking away. "And who is that?" Olivia softened, kneeling in front of him so he had no choice but to meet her gaze. "Someone who's still fighting," she said quietly. "Someone who hasn't given up, even if he thinks he has." Damen stared at her, something unreadable passing through his expression. Then, without warning, he reached out. His fingers brushed against her cheek, lingering just a second too long. Olivia's breath caught. She should have pulled away. She should have, but she didn't. And neither did he. They were standing on the edge of something dangerous, something neither of them had been prepared for. And it was only a matter of time before one of them fell. Olivia should have stepped away, she knew that. But as Damon's fingers traced lightly against her cheek, as his piercing blue eyes searched hers, she found herself frozen in place. Her breath was shallow, her heart hammering against her ribs. It would be so easy to close the distance, to give in. But before she could do something reckless, something she would regret, Damen blinked, almost as if realizing what he was doing. His jaw clenched and his hand dropped from her skin as if burned. "Go," he said abruptly, turning his wheelchair toward the fireplace. His voice was gruff, edged with something she couldn't quite place. Hurt? Frustration? Or was it the same longing she felt? Olivia hesitated. "Damen, I said go." The air between them had shifted, thick and unspoken. Whatever had happened in that moment, he wasn't ready for it. And maybe neither was she. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the room, pressing a shaking hand to her chest as she shut the door behind her. For the next few days, things between them were different. Damen was distant, colder than before. He no longer met her gaze when she helped him dress, no longer made sarcastic remarks during his therapy sessions. He answered in short, clipped sentences, keeping their interactions strictly professional. And it hurt. She hadn't realized how much she had grown accustomed to his attention, to his presence, until it was gone. Mrs. Holloway noticed. "Whatever happened between you two," the housekeeper muttered one evening, "fix it before it gets worse." Olivia frowned. "I don't know what you're talking about." Mrs. Holloway gave her a knowing look. "He's shutting down again." And the last time that happened, it took months to get him to even try to fight for himself. A pang of guilt settled in Olivia's chest. This wasn't just about her. Damen had spent the past year trapped in his own mind, convinced he was useless, broken. But she had seen him fight. She had seen the fire in his eyes when he pushed through the pain, the determination in his jaw when he worked through therapy. She couldn't let him slip back into that darkness, even if it meant confronting whatever was brewing between them. That night she knocked on his door. Silence. She knocked again. "Damen, it's me." Still nothing. With a sigh, she pushed the door open. He was by the window again, staring at the rain pelting against the glass. His hands gripped the arms of his wheelchair tightly, his entire body tense. "You're ignoring me," Olivia said, closing the door behind her. "I'm not ignoring you," he muttered. "I'm giving you space." She frowned. Space from what? Damen exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. From me. From whatever the hell happened between us the other day. Olivia's throat tightened. It was nothing. His lips twisted into a humorless smile. Right. Nothing. She crossed her arms. Why are you acting like this? Why are you pushing me away? Damen finally turned to face her, and for the first time in days, she saw the storm raging behind his gaze. Because I can't want you, Olivia, he said, his voice raw. I can't be the man you deserve. Her breath caught. You don't get to decide that. Don't I? His jaw clenched. Look at me. I can't even stand on my own. I can't give you a normal life. Can't give you the kind of future you need. And you, his voice faltered, you have a son, Olivia. You need stability, not some broken man who can barely take care of himself. Olivia's chest ached. She wanted to shake him, to make him see what she saw. You think I care about any of that, she said, stepping closer. You think I don't see the way you fight every single day? You are not broken, Damen. And you are not pushing me away because you think you're not good enough for me. You're pushing me away because you're scared. His throat worked as he swallowed. Damn right I'm scared. Silence stretched between them, heavy and thick. Then finally, he spoke again. I want you, Olivia, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. More than I should. More than I ever thought I could want anyone again. Her heart slammed against her ribs. But I won't trap you in this life, he continued, his eyes burning into hers. So if you have any sense left, you'll walk away now. Before this becomes something neither of us can undo. Olivia felt the weight of his words settle deep in her chest. He was giving her an out. A chance to leave before she got too close. Before he got too close. But instead of walking away, she reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. I'm not going anywhere, Damen. His breath hitched, and in that moment, something inside him shattered. He tugged her forward, his other hand gripping her waist, pulling her down into his lap. Their lips met in a slow, aching kiss, one filled with every unsaid word, every denied feeling, every moment of tension that had been building between them for weeks. It was raw. It was desperate. It was everything. And it changed everything. Olivia hadn't meant for this to happen. She had come to this house for a job, a paycheck, a way to give her son the stability he deserved. But now she was in Damen Sinclair's lap, his hands gripping her waist, his lips pressed against hers in a kiss that left her breathless. Everything about this was wrong, and yet she couldn't pull away. His touch sent fire through her veins, his lips demanding yet hesitant, as if he was afraid she would vanish the moment he let go. But Olivia wasn't going anywhere. Not this time. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, deepening the kiss. She felt the sharp inhale he took, the way his body tensed beneath her. For so long, he had convinced himself that he wasn't a man anymore, that his injuries had stripped him of his power, his identity. But right now he was just Damen, a man who wanted her. And God help her, but she wanted him too. Then suddenly, Damen tore his mouth from hers, his breath ragged. Olivia. His hands tightened on her waist, as if he was struggling with himself. She knew that if she didn't stop this, if she didn't force herself to be rational, they would cross a line neither of them could undo. And she wasn't ready for that. So she placed her forehead against his, closing her eyes. We should stop. He let out a shuddering breath, his fingers brushing against her skin. I know. Neither of them moved for a moment. They just sat there, breathing each other in. Then Olivia slowly pulled away, climbing off his lap and putting much-needed distance between them. She wrapped her arms around herself, avoiding his gaze. I should go. Damen's jaw clenched, but he nodded. Yeah. She turned to leave, but before she could reach the door, his voice stopped her. This doesn't change anything, he said, his voice hoarse. Olivia swallowed hard before glancing back at him. Doesn't it? She didn't wait for an answer because deep down, she already knew. The next few days were tense. Olivia tried to keep her distance, tried to pretend that nothing had happened between them. She focused on her tasks, kept their conversations brief, avoided lingering in the same room for too long. But Damen was watching her. Every time she entered a room, she could feel his gaze on her, burning intense. He didn't say anything, didn't acknowledge what had happened, but he didn't have to. It was in the way his fingers tightened around the arms of his wheelchair whenever she was near, in the way his jaw clenched whenever someone else spoke to her, in the way his eyes darkened whenever she avoided looking at him. It was dangerous, and yet neither of them seemed capable of stopping it. One evening, after she had finished cleaning up, Olivia went to check on Damen one last time before heading to bed. She found him in his room, staring at himself in the mirror. His shirt was off, revealing the scars that ran down his back and sides, evidence of the accident that had taken everything from him. His muscles were still there, his body still strong, but there was a weariness in his expression that made Olivia's heart ache. He caught her reflection in the mirror and turned slightly. Couldn't sleep, she hesitated before stepping inside. I wanted to make sure you were okay. A ghost of a smile flickered across his lips. You always do that. She didn't respond. Damen studied her for a long moment before speaking again. You're afraid. Olivia stiffened. Of what? He turned his wheelchair to fully face her. Of this. Of us. She swallowed. There is no us. His gaze. Why? He challenged. Because I'm in a wheelchair? Because I'm not the man I used to be. No, she said fiercely, stepping forward. Because you're still that man. You're stubborn. You're strong. You're everything She stopped herself before she could say too much. But Damen caught it. His jaw tightened, his hands gripping the wheels of his chair. Then what's stopping you? Olivia closed her eyes. Ethan. Her son. Her entire world. This wasn't just about her. It was about him, about the life she was trying to build for him. She couldn't afford to get caught up in something that had no future, no certainty. I have a son, she said finally. And he comes first. Something flickered in Damen's gaze. I know, he said softly. And I'd never ask you to change that. She bit her lip, emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Then don't ask me to stay. Silence. Then finally, Damen exhaled, running a hand through his hair. If that's what you want. It wasn't what she wanted, but it was what she needed. So she turned and walked away. Again. The night passed in restless sleep, her mind filled with images of Damen, his touch, his kiss, the way he had looked at her as if she was the only thing keeping him tethered to this world. By morning, she was exhausted. She barely had time to compose herself before her phone buzzed. It was the school. Her heart lurched as she answered. Hello. Ms. Carter, it's Principal Williams. Ethan collapsed in class today. We need you to come immediately. Olivia felt her blood run cold. Collapsed? Her son had collapsed? I'm on my way, she choked out, grabbing her coat and rushing toward the door. But as she reached for the handle, she collided with a firm chest. Damen. He studied her instantly, his brow furrowing. Olivia, what's wrong? Her breath was ragged, panic clawing at her throat. It's Ethan. He collapsed. I have to go. For a moment, something unreadable crossed Damen's face. Then, without hesitation, he turned his wheelchair toward the hallway. I'm coming with you. Olivia blinked, thrown off. Damen, you don't have to. I am, his voice was steady. Let's go. She didn't have the strength to argue because right now, she needed him. And for the first time, she realized maybe she always had. The car ride to Ethan's school was a blur. Olivia could barely think, barely breathe. Her hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, her foot pressing too hard on the accelerator. Slow down, Damen said beside her, his voice calm but firm. Olivia's breath came in short gasps. I can't. I need to get to him. I know, Damen said, placing his hand over hers on the wheel. His touch was grounding, steady. But getting yourself killed won't help your son. Her throat tightened, and she reluctantly eased off the gas. Damen was right. Panicking wouldn't help. But, God, she was terrified. She barely registered the way Damen kept sneaking glances at her, concern etched into every line of his face. She barely noticed how his hand remained close, as if ready to steady her at any moment. All she could think about was Ethan and the horrifying thought of what if. When they arrived, Olivia didn't even bother parking properly. She threw the car into park and practically sprinted toward the school entrance. Damen was right behind her, moving his wheelchair faster than she'd ever seen before. The school nurse met them at the front office, her expression tight. "He's in the infirmary," she said quickly. "He regained consciousness, but he's weak. We think it might be exhaustion, possibly dehydration, but we called for an ambulance just to be safe." Olivia's stomach twisted as she rushed past her, bursting into the infirmary. And there he was. Ethan was lying on a cot, his small body too pale, his bright blue eyes tired but open. "Mom," he murmured weakly. Olivia fell to her knees beside him, brushing his curls away from his damp forehead. "Oh, baby," she whispered, "you scared me." Ethan tried to smile. "Sorry." Tears burned in her eyes as she kissed his forehead. "Shoo, don't apologize. I'm here now." A presence loomed behind her, and she glanced up to see Damen hovering in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Ethan's gaze shifted to him. "Who's that?" Olivia hesitated. Before she could speak, Damen wheeled himself closer and offered a small smile. "I'm Damen," he said, his voice softer than Olivia had ever heard it. "I work with your mom." Ethan blinked. "Are you her boss?" Damen chuckled. "Something like that." Ethan studied him for a long moment, his little brows furrowed in curiosity. "You're in a wheelchair." Damen nodded. "I am. Will you ever walk again?" Olivia tensed, ready to scold Ethan for being so blunt. But Damen only smiled. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I'm working on it." Ethan considered this, then nodded. "That's good." And just like that, Olivia watched as the most important person in her life accepted the most complicated person in her life. She didn't know what to do with that. The hospital confirmed that Ethan was fine, just dehydrated and exhausted. They recommended rest, plenty of fluids, and keeping a closer eye on his nutrition. Olivia knew what they weren't saying outright. They were subtly pointing out that she wasn't doing enough, that she had been so consumed with work, with Damen, that she had missed the signs. Guilt clawed at her chest. Damen noticed as they sat in the waiting room. He turned to her. "You're blaming yourself." Olivia let out a humorless laugh. "Of course I am. I'm his mother. I should have known something was wrong." Damen shook his head. "You're doing the best you can." She swallowed. "Is it enough?" There was a long pause, then Damen reached out and took her hand. "For him," he said, his voice low, "yes, absolutely." The warmth of his touch sent a shiver up her spine. She should have pulled away. She didn't. That night, Olivia stayed by Ethan's side, holding his little hand while he slept soundly. She should have gone to bed. She was exhausted, drained in every possible way. But she couldn't move. Not until Damen wheeled himself into the room. "I figured you'd still be here," he murmured, watching her from the doorway. She sighed. "I don't want to leave him alone." "He's not alone," Damen said. "He has you." Olivia looked up at him, her heart pounding in her chest. "Damen, don't." He interrupted her. "Don't say we can't do this." Her breath hitched. He wheeled himself closer, his eyes burning into hers. "Because I know we can." She shook her head, but he kept going. "I see the way you look at me, Olivia. The way you try to push me away, but you can't." She closed her eyes, willing herself to resist him. "I can't risk this." "Ethan, I know," Damen said, his voice softer now. "And I swear to you, I would never do anything to hurt him." She opened her eyes, and what she saw in his face, raw, unguarded, real, shattered every last piece of her resistance. Slowly, cautiously, she leaned forward, and Damen met her halfway. Their lips met in a kiss that was nothing like the first. This wasn't desperate. It wasn't reckless. It was right. And for the first time, Olivia allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could be something more. The kiss was different this time. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't stolen in the heat of the moment. It was deliberate. Damen's lips moved slowly against Olivia's, as if savoring the way she fit against him. His hand cupped her cheek, his thumb grazing her skin, igniting something deep inside her. She was the first to pull away, breathless, her forehead resting against his. "We shouldn't be doing this," she whispered, though her voice lacked conviction. Damen exhaled, his fingers still tangled in her hair. "Then tell me to stop." She closed her eyes, knowing she couldn't. She didn't want to. For so long, she had convinced herself that love was a luxury she couldn't afford, that her life had no space for something so fragile, so unpredictable. But Damen was different. And no matter how hard she tried to fight it, he had become important to her. To both of them. A soft rustling from the bed made her jolt, and she quickly turned to see Ethan stirring in his sleep, his small hands clutching the blanket. Reality came crashing back in. She pulled away from Damen, her voice shaky. "We should talk about this later." Damen studied her, his jaw tightening. He understood what she wasn't saying. Not now. Not yet. But he wasn't giving up. "All right," he murmured. "Later." And despite everything, despite the uncertainty in her chest, Olivia found comfort in knowing that there would be a later. The next morning, Olivia woke up to the sound of laughter. It was light, joyful, the kind of sound she hadn't heard from Ethan in weeks. She padded toward the kitchen only to stop in her tracks at what she saw. Ethan was sitting at the counter, his feet swinging beneath the stool, while Damen was cooking. Granted, he was seated in his wheelchair, maneuvering carefully, but there he was, flipping pancakes with an amused expression as Ethan chatted animatedly beside him. It was the most normal scene Olivia had ever walked into, and it stole the breath from her lungs. Ethan turned, spotting her first. "Mom, Damen is making pancakes." Damen glanced at her over his shoulder, smirking. "Figured I owed you breakfast after last night." Her cheeks burned. "Damen." He merely shrugged, eyes twinkling with mischief. "Relax. I meant the talking part." Ethan squinted between them. "Why are you guys acting weird?" Olivia cleared her throat. "We're not. You totally are." Damen let out a chuckle, setting a plate of pancakes in front of Ethan. "Eat, kid. Less talking, more chewing." Ethan huffed but obeyed, and Olivia took the seat across from him. She still wasn't used to this, to having Damen be part of their mornings, their routine. But she liked it more than she should. And that terrified her. Later that day, Damen pulled her aside. "We need to talk." Olivia sighed, rubbing her temples. "I know. They had been dancing around this for too long." Damen took a breath. "I meant what I said last night." She knew. She had seen it in his eyes, had felt it in his kiss. "But I need to know where you stand, Olivia," he continued. "Because if this is just something temporary for you, if you don't see a future here, tell me now." Her chest tightened. She had spent so long running from her feelings, from the possibility of something more. But looking at him now, at the man who had fought his way back from the darkness, who had opened his home and his heart to her and Ethan, she knew she couldn't keep running. "I don't want this to be temporary," she admitted. "But I'm scared." Damen nodded, moving closer. "So am I." She swallowed hard. "This isn't just about me. Ethan, I know," he interrupted softly. "And I want to do this right. For both of you." Olivia's breath hitched. "Damen, She loved him. She couldn't say the words, not yet, but he knew. And when she kissed him this time, there was no hesitation, no fear. Just love. The kind that was worth everything. The months that followed were like nothing Olivia could have imagined. Damen continued his physical therapy with renewed determination. On good days, he could stand with assistance for short periods. On bad days, when the pain was too much, she held him through the frustration, through the anger. They had established a routine. Ethan had his own room at Damen's estate now, decorated with superhero posters and filled with toys Damen insisted weren't spoiling him. They absolutely were. Olivia had officially moved into Damen's suite, though she was no longer his caretaker. He had hired someone else for that. She had started working part-time at a nearby clinic, using her nursing skills for something more than just caring for one stubborn billionaire. Tonight, she was curled against Damen's side on the couch, watching Ethan build an elaborate fort out of cushions and blankets in the middle of the living room. "He's going to make a mess," she murmured, though there was no real concern in her voice. Damen chuckled, his arm tightening around her shoulders. That's what kids do. She looked up at him, studying the contentment in his features. It still amazed her sometimes how much had changed in a year. Damen was back at work now, managing his company from home most days, but occasionally going into the office. The board had been skeptical at first, but they quickly realized that the accident might have changed his body, but not his brilliant mind. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, catching her stare. "You," she admitted. "Us." How unlikely all of this was. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that still made her heart skip. The most unlikely things are often the most worth fighting for. Ethan looked up from his fort, his eyes bright. "Damen, I need more pillows." "Coming right up, buddy," Damen called back, reaching for his crutches beside the couch. He had graduated from the wheelchair to crutches for short distances, a victory that had brought tears to Olivia's eyes the first time she witnessed it. The doctors weren't sure if he'd ever walk unaided again, but Damen was determined to try. As she watched him make his way across the room, slow but steady, handing Ethan the cushions from another chair, Olivia felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was her family now. Unexpected. Imperfect. Absolutely perfect. Later that night, after Ethan was tucked into bed, Olivia found Damen on the balcony, staring up at the stars. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his shoulder. "Did I ever tell you," he said softly, "about the night after my accident? When I decided I was done?" She stilled. "No." He turned in her arms, leaning back against the railing, his eyes serious. "I had it all planned out. The pills were right there. I thought there was nothing left for me." Her throat tightened. "Damen." "But something stopped me," he continued. "Some stubborn voice telling me to wait one more day. Just one more." He reached up, cupping her face. "I never imagined that one more day would lead to you. To Ethan. To this." Tears pricked at her eyes. "I'm so glad you waited." He smiled, wiping away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "Do you know what I learned, Olivia? The universe has a strange way of giving us exactly what we need, even when we think we've lost everything." And as he lowered his mouth to hers in a tender kiss, Olivia knew he was right. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin in the most unlikely places, with a single mother desperate to feed her child, and a broken man learning to live again. Sometimes love was waiting just beyond the darkness, ready to guide them home.